días a todos. A nombre de nuestro presidente, el doctor José Jaime Rivera, les damos la más cordial bienvenida a la Universidad del Sagrado Corazón. Continuamos con las actividades conmemorativas del 25 aniversario de nuestras primeras 3 maestrías. En esta ocasión estamos llevando a cabo una de las actividades que auspicia la maestría de Gerencia de Sistemas de Información, que comenzará en agosto del 1985. Contamos para esta actividad con el Director de Operaciones de los Laboratorios McAfee, el señor Hiep Dang. Mr. Hiep Dang has been sponsored by Cortelco, one of our partners in the 25th anniversary commemoration of our graduate degree programs, and Mr. Hiep Dang is going to talk to us about what's going on at the McAfee labs, what are their current operations, and what they're looking into in the future. Without further ado, I leave you with Mr. Hiep Dang.
Yes, great, thank you. So, thank you for having me in Puerto Rico. This is my first time in this country, but I love it. I love Puerto Rican food. It's really nice. So, how many of you have heard of McAfee before? Yeah? Okay, good number. What do you think about when you first think of McAfee? Security? Okay, that's actually really good. Most people tell me, oh, the antivirus company, right? I'm like, yes, we are an antivirus company, but we are a whole lot more than just antivirus because we've evolved with the threat landscape. So to start things off, I'm going to play a quick video for you to give you kind of a little summary of what McAfee Labs is about, and then during my presentation, I'm going to go a lot more in-depth and be able to answer any of your questions. Okay? I had it buffered, but yeah, the internet's not cooperating with me. Maybe I'll play it at the end. So let's get started with the presentation then. So McAfee Labs is, I'm going to go over today with you an overview of McAfee Labs. So McAfee Labs is the research and development organization within McAfee. So we have many distinct teams within McAfee. Obviously the engineering team that creates the products that you purchase, support organization, sales organization, but the people that you don't usually see is the people behind the scenes that are doing all the research and analysis of the threats to help protect you. And McAfee Labs is that organization, the research and development organization. Then I'm going to talk about the evolving threat landscape, you know, where we've been and where are we today and where we think we will be going forward in the future. And then I don't see how many students are here? How many professors and administrators? Okay, good. So at the end, I'll give you a little link for the students in here. Hopefully my presentation will inspire you to become security researchers, because that's what the world really needs today. It's this threat from these real bad guys that we're fighting against. They're becoming more sophisticated, they're becoming more serious about what they do, and we need people, you know, to use the powers of the force for the purposes of good versus evil, and we need a lot more of those Jedi Knights from you. And professors and administrators, I hope you can inspire your students to also at least look and be aware of the security threat. So McAfee Labs, so like I mentioned, whenever I tell somebody I work at McAfee, they're like, oh, the antivirus company. Well, yes, in the 1990s when McAfee first started, John McAfee created a product and a company, and he started selling antivirus software. And that was our main competency, and that's how McAfee as a company started. But like I said, since the threat landscape has evolved, since we started adopting using the use of email, using the World Wide Web, and the discovery of vulnerabilities and the ability to exploit those vulnerabilities, McAfee has grown to cover all of those various different security threats. So not only are we in charge of researching all the different malware Now, the term malware really stands for malicious software, and it includes viruses, spyware, and rootkits, and all the other things, all the malicious files that you can find on a computer. But also we cover spam and phishing. Spam is unsolicited email, email that you don't want or you didn't expect. Phishing is websites that are pretend to be another type of website, one of the most targeted phishing sites is banks and financial institutions. They pretend to be like a Bank of America or a Santander or a Citibank, and you go to that website and you think you're at a legitimate website. You put in your username, password, all your information, and rather than giving you login to that bank, the bad guys just steal your information and use that information. Then we also cover web security. The World Wide Web is growing so much, and there's so many new websites and so many new domains that, unless you go to the normal websites that you're used to, any new one, you don't know if it's safe or if it's legitimate or not. And that's why it's very important for us to be able to tell our customers, being able to visit those sites ourselves and rate them, tell you if it's good or bad, if it's safe to browse to that website or not. And then network and host intrusion prevention. So you hear a lot about hackers today, hackers trying to get into the network, try to steal company information, trying to steal source code, trying to steal usernames and passwords. And the way they do that is they try to penetrate into a network or a website or a database to steal that information. And that's where intrusion comes into play. And there's certain technical techniques that they use to try to infiltrate a system, and we're looking for those types of intrusions, right? Think about your house. If you come home one day and you see, your door, there's something been prying on your door, or if one of your windows broken, then you automatically think somebody's been trying to get into my house. Well, you can think of the same thing from a technical perspective. If at your network, someone's been hitting your network with network packets, trying to get into certain areas, then that gives you an alarm, right? And it tells you somebody's been trying to get into my house, and you need to act on it. And so we have researchers that understand those capabilities, and we have products to help you identify those types of intrusions. So McAfee Labs is a 24/7 emergency response team. And basically, we have researchers scattered all over the world. And we use what we call the follow the sun methodology. Whenever the sun is shining, we have employees watching the threat landscape and responding to our customers in case they have any threats to protect them. And as an organization, we hold hundreds of patents, so we're always thinking about technology. We're also trying to come up with new ideas and new ways to fight against the bad guys. And we work with many of our other colleagues and peers in the industry, Symantec, Microsoft, Trend Micro, Kaspersky. All of these companies, even though they're our competitors, from a research perspective, they're also our peers. And we also share ideas with each other. How do we fight against the bad guys? And we work in these working groups and these security conferences with each other. Okay, so McAfee Labs, here's a couple of quick milestones. We've been around since the early 1990s. Now, McAfee Labs is an organization. If you do Google the word AVERT, A-V-E-R-T, you'll usually find a lot of McAfee Labs' previous material. We used to be called AVERT, and it used to stand for Antivirus Emergency Response Team. But like I said, since we've grown beyond just antivirus, and since we've grown to cover every threat possible on the internet, we changed our names to McAfee Labs. And as a result, we have, these are various different milestones that AVERT and McAfee Labs has accomplished through the years. We were the first to discover some of the most significant viruses and worms in the world. And we hired teams of highly intelligent, highly smart, passionate, and what I call, they have intellectual curiosity. These are the kind of people that when they look at something, they don't just accept it for what it is. They have to understand how it works. If they see a new file or they see a new computer virus, their intellectual curiosity gets the best of them, and they research it and understand it to its fullest. And those are the types of people that we hire, and they're so passionate about what they do. I always say, our employees, they'd be doing this even whether we paid them or not. And they just happen to find their passion in industry where they can get paid to do so. And that's what most people look for in a career. And we still have some of the founding members from that team of AVERT in 1995. There was about 9 members. A few of them are still with the company to this day. So that's how passionate they are. McAfee Labs, when you break it down, there's 3 distinct organizations in our organization. So the one that most people think about is our operations. These are the researchers that sit in front of the computer, that can analyze a piece of malware, that can look at vulnerabilities and understand it. So have you ever seen the movie Matrix, and they look at the binary code that's falling down the screen, and they're like, oh, that's a redhead, that's a blonde, right? Well, our malware researchers, I always say that they can read hexadecimal code and binary code the same way. They can open up a file, an executable file in a hex editor, and identify patterns in that file that they've seen before, and they recognize, like, oh, that's definitely a Trojan, or that's definitely a worm, or this is part of this family because I've recognized this before. So they can literally do that and look at hexadecimal code and be able to identify whether it's malicious or not. Then we have our engineering organization. Now, this isn't the engineering team that actually creates the products that you purchase. These guys are the unsung heroes of McAfee Labs. They create the automation in the back end to allow the researchers to do all of their work. Now, I'm going to show you some graphs a little bit later, and you can see how much the threat landscape has evolved through the years. And the only way we've been able to deal with this growing threat landscape is through automation. Being able to process and analyze. We see tens of thousands of new malicious files every single day. And the only way we can process through that is through automation. And then we have our core team of PR and communications. Dave Marcus is a good friend of mine. He's kind of the voice and the face of McAfee Labs. He goes and talks to the media. He brags about what all the geeks behind the walls do. And we talk about and try to educate our customers. So here is what we call global threat intelligence. What we've done is we've taken the subject matter experts in all of these security disciplines, malware research, spam research, vulnerability research, and we've taken them and everything that they understand and know, their experiences and their knowledge on files, on URLs, on vulnerabilities and exploits, on emails and websites, we put it all in a large collection of databases. And this is what we call global threat intelligence. And together, being able to connect the dots between a malicious website and a malicious software, we can better understand where these threats are coming from. So for example, you get an email in your inbox you've never seen before, and it says, hey, look at this new YouTube video. I think it's really fun. I think you should click on it, right? Well, what happens is if you're not cautious, you click on that website, it's going to take you to a malicious website. As soon as you click on that link and you open up your web browser, you're immediately going to get infected with malware, right? And this is where the global threat intelligence comes into play. If you see a spam, and if that spam, we've never seen that spam before, and our spam engine doesn't detect it, then it's something that we need to be aware of, right? And if our web reputation says this is a website that we know about that is malicious, go ahead and block it, don't let the user touch it. Or we've seen that website hosting a lot of different malware before, but we've never seen the malware coming, this new one that's ever come through. But we know that came from a malicious website. So we're gonna get our hands on that file right away and try to understand if that's a new piece of malware or not. So that's how the World Wide Web plus email plus malicious software kind of interrelate with each other. So here's some numbers. I won't bore you with too many numbers, but it gives you an idea of the type of volume of data that we're dealing with. From World Wide Web, we see over 75 billion web reputation queries per month on all of our products. 20 billion emails we process per month. 2.5 billion malware, and 300 million intrusion attacks per month. This is what we see from our customers. So what do we know with all of our collective intelligence? Well, we know about every single piece of malware that's ever been created for the last 20 plus years. We know about every IP address and domain that has sent email for the last 6 years, every URL, every IP address, every domain that's ever been registered. So we have an understanding of the World Wide Web, of technology, and of all the threats that are being exposed to our customers on a regular basis. And here's some more of some of the correlation of data that we do. So how do you get your hands on this type of information, this type of knowledge? Well, we have many different ways for you to do so. We have our security blog right here, and our security blog, it's the only security blog that was nominated for a Cody Award, which is a pretty big deal in the world of blogs. And the reason why we're award nominated is because, no offense to my friends at Cortelco, but we don't let any salespeople or product people touch our blog. This is strictly research and development blog. So whenever a new researcher comes into the organization, we give them a username and password, and we tell them, whatever you're working on, whatever you're thinking about, if you want to talk about it, if you want to write about it, go ahead and write a blog about it. And our customers love this because they feel like they're looking over the shoulders of our researchers as they're doing their research, as they're doing their analysis, and they can understand almost real time what's going on behind the scenes at McAfee Labs. We also have a security journal that we publish twice a year, and this talks more about the abstract industry and the threats and some really provocative subjects. Then we have our Audio Parasitics, which is a podcast you can download for free. It's the most downloaded security podcast in the world. And you can download it to your iPod or even listen to it on your computer while you're working. And Dave Marcus, a really good friend of mine, is the main MC for the podcast. And he talks about all kinds of different topics, all kinds of different subjects. We have guest speakers coming in and guests that he interviews and talks about the latest threats. Then our Threat Center, if you want to know information about a specific virus, a specific vulnerability, go to our Threat Center, and it's got all of that information, the top 25 descriptions of all the viruses and malware that we have. And then we have our security advisories. Now, some of you who will become IT administrators, or some of you who already are responsible for a network, the security advisories is very important for you because it alerts you on any new threats that you may be faced with, right? And it also tells you if you're using any of McAfee's products, it'll tell you which ones you're protected against based on the products that you have installed on your environment. And it's really good. Are you all familiar with Patch Tuesday? Patch Tuesday is the second week of every single month. This is when Microsoft releases all of its patches for any vulnerabilities or any security risks that's found in their products. And that day is a really busy day for most of our researchers because every time Microsoft releases something, we need to make sure that we have signatures for them. We need to make sure that our risk and compliance is updated so that all of our products and all of our customers are updated to the latest versions of the patches so that they're no longer vulnerable to some of those exploits. All right. Any questions so far? When I present, I don't like it when it's a one-way conversation. If you have any questions along the way, anytime, feel free to raise your hand and ask me. I'll be glad to clarify. All right, so I'll continue. Let's go through the evolving threat landscape. All right, let's rewind back and go to 1997. And the reason why I chose 1997 is because that was when the world really started to change. It really, and so this is a snapshot of before it changed and what it will be today, or what it is today, I'm sorry. So in 1997, we had about 400 vulnerabilities in the National Vulnerability Database. Spam was only a minor issue. Only 5% of all email was spam. We had 17,000 classified viruses and Trojans in our signatures for our antivirus product. Now, password stealing Trojans first appeared in 1997. Is everyone familiar with what a password stealing Trojan is? This one specifically targeted AOL, America Online. And if you remember, America Online was the largest internet service provider in the world in the 1990s. And I love AOL. AOL used to be a really good customer of mine when I worked for a startup company. But what they didn't realize is they helped create some of the things that we see today. So America Online back in the 1990s, do you remember getting CDs in the mail? Almost every single day. And they said, hey, give America Online a try for 30 days. And if you like it, give us your credit card and then you can try America Online, and be a regular customer. And so what they used to do is they give you the CD, and then the people that want to become America Online customers, they would put in their credit card number information, and now they are paying what they used to charge, I think, per minute for internet access. But one of the things that America Online didn't do during that time is they didn't authenticate the credit card. So you could put in a credit card. So every MasterCard starts with 4054, Discover card 6011. So you could put in your credit card number and a series of different numbers, and they didn't authenticate. They didn't verify whether it's a legitimate credit card or not. So the bad guys discovered this, and what they realized was, hey, I'm going to put in any number I want to, and I get free internet, right? And I can do whatever I want. But then America Online realized, their mistake. So they did what every business does. They changed their practices. So they now started authenticating the credit cards. Well, the bad guys realize now, well, wow, I can't put in just random numbers anymore. I can't get free internet access. But I don't want to pay for it now since I've had it free for so long. So what did they start doing? They started targeting America Online customers. So rather than putting in fake credit card numbers, they now need to get access to real credit card numbers. So they created password stealing Trojans, which is a virus, or I'm sorry, a malware, not a virus, there's a big difference, that sits in a machine and collects your username and password. And now they have usernames and passwords of real, legitimate AOL customers, and they can continue to get free internet. This is also how phishing started. Now, if you remember, I said phishing is a website that pretends to be the legitimate company's website. And so the bad guys would start sending emails to America Online customers and say, your username and password has expired. Please click on this link, go to this website, and put in a new username and password. And by the way, we also need your credit card number. We also need your mother's maiden name, your social security number, your driver's license, everything. And at that time, no one knew that that was a threat. No one knew that people would pretend to be somebody else. And so you would put in your credit card information, you put in your username and passwords, and now the bad guys have all of that information. And they can do whatever they want with it. Okay? So that was 1997. And some of these words, adware, botnets, mobile, phishing, those words today that we use almost every single day didn't even exist in 1997. So let me fast forward to today. 1997, the end of 2009. You can see the difference here. We went from 440 vulnerabilities to 39,000. We went from 400 password stealing Trojans to today over 610,000. And these are the various different malware categorizations, and this is the numbers that we're seeing today. Hundreds of millions compared to just tens of thousands less than 15 years ago. And here's a graphical representation of that. You see here in the 1990s, and you see here today, end of 2010. This is the type of volume that we're dealing with. So why is it that it's growing so much? What is their number one motivation? What do you think? It's this right here, right? Money. Money and also data, but it still comes back to money because they take that data and they convert it to money and they sell it. And I'll show you how they do that a little bit later. And here's also a more breakdown. The red bar is viruses and bots. You can see here, viruses kind of go through a cyclical cycle. Well, that's redundant, a cycle. It goes up and then it comes back down and then goes back up again. But the blue bar is what is most significant, the Trojans. And the Trojans is what they use to try to make money. Fake alert is one of our growing threats as well. So the bad guys realize now that because they've created so much malware and almost everyone needs to have antivirus on their computer, what did they decide to do? Well, they decided to exploit that dynamic and start creating fake antivirus software. So you go to a website, you get infected with one of these fake AV Trojans, and now you see on the bottom of your screen, we just detected that you were infected with so-and-so software, even though your computer was perfectly clean. And they say, in order to clean this infection, please give us your credit card. You can buy the full product for $29.95, right? So what do? Oh my God, I have a virus on my machine, even though I don't. So they created this fear. And you put in your credit card information. The best thing that can happen to you is they charge you $30 and you never hear from them again. But the worst case that can happen is they now have your credit card information, your credentials, and they can use that however they want to. So that is a growing threat that we're looking at right now. Auto run detection, auto run worms is also a growing threat. How many of you use a USB thumb drive to share data back and forth? Well, that USB is the floppy disk of the 1990s, right? So whenever you plug in your thumb drive, do you see a Windows pop-up that says, would you like to run? What that is a feature in Windows. And Microsoft wanted to make it convenient. Their operating system, they sell to so many people, they want to make it convenient for people to use their operating system. So you plug in a CD, if you plug in a USB thumb drive, it'll automatically open up for you and say, what would you like to do next? The bad guys realized that they could exploit this. By plugging in a USB thumb drive and running whatever is in there, they could put a worm, a piece of malware in that thumb drive. As soon as you plug it in, you infect your entire computer. Now, as soon as you take that thumb drive and put it to another computer, it infects that. As soon as you take a clean thumb drive, that's with nothing on it, and you plug it into an infected computer, that thumb drive is now infected. Right? And that's how a worm moves from one machine to another. Yes, sir?
How you can deal with that? How would you know if your thumb drive is infected or not?
Okay.
Before getting into the computer.
Before getting to the computer, number one, make sure you turn off your auto run on the operating system. You can do a Google search. It's very easy to do. It's a matter of changing your registry key or even going into the Windows settings and changing so that there's no auto run functionality. So if you plug in your thumb drive, it won't run anything. Okay? But you have to go into My Computer, go to that thumb drive directory in order to see the data. So now you have to click 3 or 4 times rather than it opening up. So security is inconvenient, unfortunately, right? But the most secure thing possible is something that's not usable. So you have to find that balance between convenience and security. And so as IT administrators, I recommend turning off all your auto runs on all the computers that you administer, but also making sure you run antivirus software on your machines as well. Yes, sir?
Are Macs as vulnerable as Windows?
It's a very good question. I get that all the time. Yeah, so we've all seen that commercial. I'm a PC, I'm a Mac. Macs don't get computer viruses, right? So, I love Apple, but they are creating a false sense of security. There's no computer, there's no operating system that is not susceptible to malware or vulnerabilities. The advantage that Apple has, though, is that 95% of all the computers in the world are Windows PCs. So if I'm a bad guy and I want to write a piece of code to steal information and do that kind of thing, well, am I going to write it for a Mac, which only has 5% of the market share, or am I going to write it for Windows, which has 95% of the market share? So if with billions of people using the machine, if only 0.01% of those people fall for my trap, that's still a pretty large number, right? And so it's a game of numbers really for these bad guys. Mac isn't any more or less vulnerable or susceptible to threats than Windows is. It's just that they don't have as much market share. And you can see that same trend not only in operating systems, but in other places as well. How many of you have a Facebook or MySpace account, right? A lot of you. So Facebook today is the #1 visited website in the world. MySpace and Facebook surpassed Yahoo about 5 or 6 years ago, and Yahoo used to be #1. And when you have a population of people that large, that's where the bad guys are going to go, okay? Because they can exploit that large population of people, because if only a fraction of a percent of those people do what those bad guys want them to do, then they win, right? So you can see that, and whatever the new technology is tomorrow, whenever you have a large critical mass of people, that's where the bad guys will go. All right, so let me fast forward through this, because you're going to see, speaking of Facebook, KubeFace is a piece of malware or Trojan that targets Facebook users. So when you're infected with KubeFace, it will have your username and password to your Facebook, and what it will do is it will send status updates and comments on your behalf to all of your friends. And they'll say, hey, check out this new video. This is you and I on vacation or something like that. You click on the link, you are infected with KubeFace now. And now they have more username and passwords, and they can spread their Trojan throughout all of the Facebook users. Now, to Facebook's credit, they've done a lot to improve the security of their systems. They do a lot in identifying when there's automated comments being made by KubeFace, and they're really cracking down on a lot of the threats coming in. And we've helped partnered with them and help advise them on how to do that as well. So this comes from one of our reports that we publish every single year. It comes from our SiteAdvisor product. And if you're not familiar with SiteAdvisor, it's totally free. I recommend you downloading it, because what Site Advisor does is when you do a Google search, Site Advisor will tell you if that site is red, yellow, or green. Green meaning safe. You go ahead and browse to it because we haven't discovered any threats or any problems with it. Red means that we've actually found malware being hosted on that website. So if you go there, be very careful. And yellow means it's been known to host adware or spyware or send you a lot of spam. So browse at your own risk when you go to these sites. And one of the things that we did was we did analysis of the type of Google searches that most people do, and we identified, this is actually a little old today, Cameron Diaz is the #1 most dangerous celebrity, but this was from a year ago, Jessica Biel was. So if you do a Google search on Jessica Biel or Cameron Diaz, you have a higher chance of getting infected with malware if you click on one of those sites. So it's interesting to see. Phishing, the number of phishing sites and the most targeted brands, PayPal, eBay, and a lot of financial institutions. I'm going to fly through this because these are screenshots of real phishing websites. If you look at that, it looks really like the Bank of America website. If you look at this, this is a really nicely designed website to do credit checks and that kind of thing. But if you put in your username and password and PIN number here, guess what? You're not going to go to Bank of America. You're just going to go to some fake site, and now the bad guys have your credentials. If you go here, you put in your username, your first name, last name, address, credit card number, social security number. Now they have all your information. Some phishing sites are better than others. I've seen one phishing site that asks for your father's maiden name. Yeah, father's maiden name. So if you fall for that, I'm sorry. But a lot of phishing sites are actually very legitimate and they look very good. So here's an example of some of the largest identity theft and data loss instances in the world so far. I'm going to start off with #2. I'm not sure, do you have a TJ Maxx here or Marshalls? It's Marshalls. It's a clothing store, right? My wife loves to shop at Marshalls and TJ Maxx, and she did so, and I found out, we're part of this. So what TJ Maxx unfortunately did is they have, every store has a point of sale machine, the cash register, where you go and you swipe your credit card and you purchase clothing from them. And every point of sale system, it goes into a central database. And that database has all their customers' credit card information, transactions, if they need to do a return, it's all in their database. Unfortunately for TJ Maxx, that point of sale system and that database was attached to a wireless network. And that wireless network was not secure. There was no WPA or WEP encryption at all, so it's completely wide open. So these guys in Florida discovered this, and what they did was they sat in a parking lot of TJ Maxx with their laptop and downloaded 94 million TJ Maxx customers' credit cards. One of those credit cards was my credit card, unfortunately. Right? Oh, they never actually end up using it, but I did get a call from Citibank, and they said, we're going to issue you 2 brand new credit cards. And I asked them, does this have anything to do? They wouldn't admit it, but every credit card from TJ Maxx has been compromised, of anyone who ever shopped there before 5 years ago. After TJ Maxx, we thought that was the largest data loss instance in the internet at that time. Then 1 year later, Heartland Payment Systems. Very, very similar situation. I mean, they were responsible for the point of sale systems for many retail and commercial stores around the United States. And unfortunately, they had a vulnerability in their database that allowed the bad guys to infiltrate their network and be able to download 130 million credit card numbers. So you might ask, well, these bad guys, they have these credit card numbers now, and they have these bank accounts. Well, what do they do with it? Here's one thing that they can do with it. This is a screenshot from a real website. You can go here, and we can buy a Washington Mutual Bank account in the US that has a balance of $14,400. And that is real money sitting in this real bank account. If I want access to that, it will cost me 600 euros, which is about 900 US dollars. So what did the bad guys in TJ Maxx do? They took all those credit card numbers, or not all of them, they took a small portion of them, and they created fake clone credit cards. It looks exactly the same, but with real data now on those credit cards, and they would go to a Walmart or one of those other stores, and they would buy gift cards with them. Right? So now you have a credit card that you couldn't really do anything with, and you go and buy gift cards, and now you have real liquid assets, real liquid gift cards that you can purchase and then sell that if you wanted to. So that's how they make money. Any questions so far? Let me walk you through how a bot master makes money. Who's not familiar with the term bot or botnet? Okay, so a bot is, think of a bot as a large group of computers that one person or a group of people have control over. So let's say every one of your computers right now, I'm the bot master. I have control over all of your computers, and I can make them do whatever I want to. Okay, so Newar or Stormworm was on record for being one of the largest botnets in the world until we caught the guy, and now it's all gone. But the bot master here has control of all these machines, all of your machines that are infected with his Trojan. And what he can do is, well, what I want to do is I want to grow my botnet now. And this is a small group of people, maybe 20. I want to get into the millions of computers I have control over. So what he'll do is he'll use your computer and send an email to another person that isn't infected. And that email will say, hey, check out this new link, check out this new video by Enrique Iglesias. And you click on it because you really like Enrique Iglesias, and it takes you to a website. That website doesn't actually go to the real video. It'll go to this botnet, which will then send the Trojan down to the machine, and now that machine is infected. Okay? Now, I'm the bot master, and I want to make money. What can I do with that? So, sir, you just started a new company, right? And you're selling pharmaceutical drugs, or you're selling whatever it is that you want to sell. But you don't want to pay so much money in advertising, because advertising costs a lot of money. So you come to me as the bot master, and you say, I want to get the word out to as many people that I have, these pharmaceutical drugs available to sell. Well, I'll give you a deal. I'll charge you a penny for every 10 emails I send, just a penny. And I take my millions of machines, and I send out emails to millions of people on your behalf. And now, if I send out 1 million emails advertising your thing, you just paid me a few $1,000s. Cheap money when it comes to advertising. And if only a few percentage of those people end up buying your product, you got, now you're generating revenue for your own business, and I just made money, and I didn't even do anything except click a mouse button. Or let's say you have a company, and your biggest competitor and your biggest rival is this lovely lady right here. Yeah, you both seem very nice, but deep down inside, you don't like each other. And you know that she makes the most of her revenue, or most of her business, between hours of 12 and 4 p.m. every single day, right? And you know that if her business or her website is down, then all of her customers will go to you and buy stuff from you. So you come to me and you say, I want to steal her business during those hours. You can come to me and pay for what we call a distributed denial of service attack. And what I will do is I will take all these computers right here and direct internet traffic all to her website. And what it's going to do is it's going to overload her website, and her website is now going to be not functional. It's going to bring down her website, and she can't do business. That's what's called a distributed denial of service attack. All right? So that's how these guys make money, and that's how they do. So when McAfee, what we always say is you need to have layered security across your network and your environment. Layered security means, when you have your house, you don't just walk out the door and then leave it unlocked. You have a lock on the bottom, you have a deadbolt, you make sure you lock all your windows. So you have various different layers of security around your house. Maybe you have an alarm in your house. If anyone breaks into it, it'll sound an alarm, and it'll call the cops, and they'll come running. So same situation here. When that email gets sent to this user, if you have an anti-spam product running, then that email will not even touch your inbox, and it won't go to any of your users. So they don't even have the option of clicking anything or getting infected. But if it gets past your spam filter and they end up reading the email, and they decide to click on the link anyway, if you have SiteAdvisor installed, then that website, if it's rated red, they won't even be able to visit it. They might click on it and it'll block it right away. If it happens to get past that, and that malware ends up coming down to that machine. If you have antivirus installed, that antivirus will stop it before it ever executes on the machine. Okay, so layered security from the gateway all the way down to the desktop. All right, so we've talked about the past, we've talked about the present. Now let's talk about a little bit about the future and what we look at. So here is another visualization of the world from 1990 till now. And I have it broken down by the threats that the world saw at that time, the vectors, what influences those threats, and the motivations from the bad guys. So in 1990, before people really started using the internet, what we mostly saw was computer viruses. And those computer viruses used to spread through either floppy disk or local area networks. And they used to infect .coms or .exe files. And the operating system at the time was Windows 3.0 and 3.x. And the main reason why there were computer viruses back then, really just for geek bragging rights. Right? If I'm a computer geek and I know, I think I'm the best geek in the world, writing a computer virus is one of those things that to prove to yourself and to prove to your friends that you're really smart technically. And so they would write computer viruses and they would send it out and they would brag about what they used to do. Right? And there used to be like a little competition in the world of geeks, who could write the better computer virus, who can make it spread more, who can keep it alive for the longest period of time, and who can get it to spread to as many people as possible. So then you move over to the 1990s, and this is when the people started using emails, started visiting the World Wide Web, this new thing called the internet. Right? Windows 95 was the first operating system that had networking capability built into it because Microsoft knew this new thing called the internet was going to be the next big thing. And so what happened was boot sector and floppy disk viruses started to decline. And what we started seeing now was password stealing Trojans to steal usernames and passwords. We started seeing viruses that would spread in Microsoft Office software because that was being used by businesses a lot. We started seeing all these various different script viruses. And so into the late 2000s, you've got now peer-to-peer networks. You've got IM clients. You've got drive-by downloads. Now there's over 100 million users on the internet. So the motivation started to change from just bragging rights to now being financially motivated. Revenge in some cases. In 2004, we had what we called the virus wars. There was one guy that was writing a computer virus, and he was bragging about his abilities. And there was another guy who thought that he was better than that guy. So they had a competition. We literally call it the virus wars, where one would write a virus and brag about how great his was, another one would write a virus and brag about how great he was. And it got to a point where this virus would detect the presence of the other virus on the machine and kill that so that it could spread. Right? So it was horrible from a researcher perspective because we would be up late at night every single time we get a new call, oh my God, another virus, and we'd have to go scrambling, write a new signature, and send it out. And back then, our signatures, in the 1990s, we used to update our signatures once a month because there weren't that many computer viruses. Then in the 2000s, or late 1990s, we used to update our signatures once every week. And now we update it once every day. And even in a 24-hour period, that's still not enough. We see tens of thousands of new malware every single day. And since then, we've also created our cloud technology called Artemis, where almost real time, if something suspicious comes on your machine and we know about it in our global threat intelligence, it will block and stop the malware even without a signature file. Right? So to today, what do we see now? We see financially motivated malware. Social networking sites like MySpace, LinkedIn, Facebook is being exploited to propagate malware. And you have all these various different complex malware that the bad guys keep coming up with to try to get their malware on as many machines as possible. So going forward 5 years from now, what do we think we're going to see? Right? There's going to be changes in the operating system. We're already moving from Windows XP to Vista and now Windows 7, right? Apple is growing as far as market share. That little handheld device that you have in your pocket right now, that is more powerful than the best computers that you can buy just a few years ago, right? And that little mobile phone can do internet access, it can go to websites, it can do financial transactions, you can download all kinds of different applications to it to do whatever you want to, right? So really the main point of all this right here is these are the lessons that we've learned. The bad guys will go. I mean, technology doesn't change that dramatically that quickly. There are trends, and you can kind of anticipate the trends. Changes in operating system, changes in large websites in the internet, changes in technology and where people go to utilize that technology, changes in practices, right? Before the internet, no one ever put their credit card online. You would go to a store and swipe it, right? Before, when the internet first came out, like companies like Amazon, eBay, at first they had a lot of trouble convincing people to put their credit card on the internet because people didn't know if it was safe or not. And now everyone does it, right? And now everyone is, I think Chase Bank has the ability, if you use your iPhone, you can take a picture of your paycheck and will automatically direct deposit it into your bank account right away. So these are all really great features because it makes our lives a lot easier, but it's also what the bad guys look at to try to exploit and get as much information as you want. So we want to look at those trends where there's shifts in technology, where there's shifts in behavior, where there's a very large critical mass of people that's visiting or using that technology. That's where the bad guys will go. Okay? So our vision in McAfee Labs, being able to, I call what we do, it's a technological game of chess. Because the bad guys always have the element of surprise. Because a malware author, when he creates a new piece of malware, he has the ability to use every single security product out there to make sure that none of them detect his malware before he releases it to the world. Right? But it's our job to get our hands on it as quickly as possible and then make sure that we have protection for our customers. So we're trying to anticipate their next move on a constant basis. So foresight into vulnerabilities and threats. We have to use automation. That's the only way we could deal with the large volume of threats that we have. Making sure that we're responding in a timely manner to our customers. So we went from monthly data updates to weekly to daily and now almost real time. And global threat intelligence. Being able to correlate all of the data, all the information that we understand about all of these different threats together to be able to better anticipate the bad guy's next move. All right. So lastly, I'm going to end with this. You know, one of the questions I get asked a lot is, you know, what kind of researchers do I look for? Or what kind of people do I look for? And where do I find them? Right? How do I, as a computer scientist, you don't get taught how to analyze malware in computer science class. You get taught operating systems, you get taught programming languages. If you're in MIS, you get taught the business of managing a network, the risks involved, policies, and that kind of thing. So the one thing I always say is it's not really the technical skills, because we have employees that never went to college. We also have employees that are PhDs, and we're really well respected. And we have an entire spectrum of employees in various different backgrounds, various different places around the world, various different interests and experiences. But the one common thing across all of our employees is, number one, passion for what they do, and intellectual curiosity. You know, if they saw that virus for the very first time, everyone's had that experience, getting infected for the very first time. What did you do when that happened? Did you just say, oh, I'm going to install an antivirus product and hopefully it'll take care of it? Or did they say, what is that, what did it do, and how did it get there? And if they have the curiosity to learn more, to understand more about what happened, and they dug down to understand that virus, that's how most of our employees end up getting into this business, because their curiosity got the best of them, and they took matters into their own hands, and they went and they talked to people. They went to bulletin boards, they went to other message boards to understand more what happened to their machine, and then as a result, they got hooked. They did what I call, they swallowed the red pill from the Matrix, right? Once you swallow that red pill, you go down that path, and you're open to a completely new world. And once you're open to that world, there's no going back, because now you understand how the computer works, you understand how this other world works. right? And so we're always looking for very talented people, security researchers, but also software developers and quality assurance engineers. And this is the website you go to, McAfee.com/careers. Go to this website. It's always online. We always post job postings there all around the world. Because we're a globally distributed organization, we're always hiring all over the world in all various different countries. And the great thing about it is you're also exposed to all these various different cultures. I mean, it's great to see, when I have a team meeting, it's great to see someone from Asia, someone from India, someone from England, someone from Latin America, all sitting at the same table. And we speak different native languages, but we all still speak English. And we talk about the same security language. Right? And you can see those same people on IM conversations in the middle of the night because they thought of some idea and they're able to collaborate. Because 1 a.m. here is maybe 1 p.m. in the middle of India or Asia. Right? And that's one of the great things about working for our organization and our company. And here are some other links. I mentioned the McAfee Security Journal, Audio Parasitics, and I'll be glad to send these links to you. Feel free to visit. And that's it. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Can you talk a little bit about security in the cloud?
Mm-hmm.
The cloud, what makes this better or worse?
Well, the cloud, what the cloud allows us to do is, rather than having our signatures and everything there on the local machine, because there is a latency in order to get, so I'll use our virus signatures as an example. Whenever we publish our signatures, it's usually 10 a.m. Pacific time is when we publish our virus signatures. And if you're an IT administrator and you're in charge of thousands of computers in your network, what ends up happening is we upload it at 10 a.m. You as an IT administrator now needs to bring it down. If you need to do any testing, you do so, and then you have to distribute it onto all those thousands of machines. So it may take a few hours. It might even almost take an entire day, depending on how large your network is and how many computers you need to update. What the cloud allows us to do is have all of that intelligence and that data about malware and about threats in the cloud, in the internet. And so what our products do now is whenever you see a new suspicious file that you've never seen before in the operating system, rather than waiting for the next DAT signature come around the next 24 hours, you can immediately query the cloud, and the cloud will come down and say, yep, I know about this. So a perfect example is we have instances where we saw something for the very first time in European time zone. And because our European researchers saw that, we were able to flag that file as being malicious in our back-end database. But we're not able to update our DAT file within that period of time. So because we were able to flag it as malicious and that got updated to the cloud, by the time the US woke up, they were already proactively protected against it. Because now we know that's malicious, so now when it hits the computers in the US, it's already caught and it's already blocked from the machine.
So would you say that the cloud will make systems more secure?
It depends on the use of the cloud. But yes, the cloud just allows us to be able to have our the information and data more readily available. It just makes things more efficient. Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of concern about security in the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
How would you opt in the cloud with certain data would be stolen by somebody else?
Yeah, I mean that's true with almost anything, right? I mean the cloud isn't any more or less susceptible than, say, your credit card being in the database of of some company. And the cloud, the security around the cloud, I mean the cloud ultimately is still a bunch of servers, and it's still using the internet or TCP/IP or whatever protocol to communicate with each other. So whatever vulnerabilities or whatever issues are around those machines, those have to be protected just as much as any normal network. Yep.
I have a few additional questions.
Sure, go ahead.
Well, I've heard that the scientific community is setting up their own internet. It's going to be like invitation only.
Mm.
Have you heard about that? Is that actually happening?
I haven't heard about it, but I'm not surprised. I mean, the internet started because it was an academic all right, the ARPANET, and it was, what was it, MIT and Stanford? I forgot the two schools that did that. But the proof of concept of the internet started as an academic experiment, right? So I'm not surprised if academia is thinking about the problems of the internet today and trying to improve on the architecture, because the internet, TCP/IP and the current internet architecture was designed, in the late 60s, 70s, and we're still using it today. So I haven't heard it, but I'm not surprised.
But is that a good way to secure it? Come up with your own private internet, and that way control people that can get access to that actually?
It depends on what their intentions are, and because I don't know about the situation, I can't necessarily comment. But what I can say is, that's how most ideas are conceived, right? You can't boil the ocean, as we say in the business world, by solving a problem for everyone. You try to solve the small problem, create a prototype or a proof of concept, and if it has weight, and it has, if it's a really good idea, it's going to eventually grow. And that's how the internet grew, because it was an idea between two schools, two universities that wanted to make two mainframe computers communicate with each other. And through that one idea, we now have the internet. Let me go to the gentleman and then I'll come back to you. Yes, sir.
What are the parameters for the cookies, mostly in advertising, that are dropped by every website you visit, and that tells the person that's interested in your information of how you behave, or what sites you use or not? Comparing it to a virus or
Well, yeah, so it's a good question. So a cookie is not malicious per se, right? But a cookie does contain information, like you say, and it really depends on that website's use of that cookie. So if the website puts your username and password in plain, clear text, then it's not very good practice, right? But cookies are just it's the ability for a website to be able to store some data locally, so to make it easier for you to visit the next time you go to that website. So it's up to you as far as how secure you want to make your computer. I mean, some people clear their cookies every single time that they close their browser, right?
Exactly. But doesn't it send information of what kind of behavior you have, what kind of sites you visit, so that, let's say I go into Google Ads will give me an ad that tells me, oh, this guy likes NASCAR and golf. So it only pops up the kind of advertising that would be directed to me specifically, or to that person.
Well, I wouldn't say that's just the cookie that does that. I don't know if you realize it yet, but they already know what your interests are. From Facebook, from Google, Amazon. If you ever look at Amazon, you go buy anything at Amazon, they have your purchase history, and they'll say, well, you bought this, a bunch of other people who looked at this also likes this. Right? So that kind of information is, they're already collecting that kind of profile on consumers, and that's where a lot of their intelligence in marketing and PR comes from. Yeah.
I went to a seminar a few years ago, the Financial Analysts Association in San Diego. The bank's biggest problem at the time was credit card fraud.
Credit card fraud,
And they talked about people publishing an ad in the newspaper. Instead of doing a phishing ad on the internet, they would do it on the newspaper. And people would fax them, all their information. And they were losing, I forget the number, but it was like $10 billion a year. I wonder what's happened in the last 2 years. I mean, who's winning? Are banks getting killed?
Well, so I can't speak on behalf of the financial institutions, but I have talked to a few of them in some of our industry conferences. I mean, they're always thinking about the problem. But you came from finance, right? A lot of it really boils down to numbers. It's like the amount of liability that they're willing to deal with, right? Just so forget credit card fraud. Just think about the people who default on their credit card because they can't pay for it, right? Or they have late fees. So the ways that the banks make money is they know with a certain percentage of how much liability they're able, and liability and risk they're able to take. Based on people that default on their loan or default on their credit cards. And same thing with credit card fraud. I think there's a certain number, and I don't know what that number is, and each bank knows what their threshold is of how much they're willing to deal with.
Every time I get into my bank account through the internet, am I risking losing my password?
Well, no, I don't want to say stop using the internet, But I do want to say, try to be as safe as possible, right? When you go to a bank, one of the first things I always look for in the web address where it says HTTP, look for, before you ever put in your credit card information, look for HTTPS. And the S means it's a secure channel to that website. And every bank does it. And if your bank doesn't do it, I would recommend telling them to do it or going to another bank institution. But just be aware of just some of the safe practices and best practices. You can just do a Google search. I mean, the government has white papers and documents that tell you what's the best way to conduct yourself. McAfee has that as well. You know, from your passwords, how safe your passwords are, right? Definitely don't do password equals password or 1, 2, 3. You know, the longer your password is, the safer it is, and the more different characters you use. Don't just use letters. Use capital letters and lowercase letters. Use numbers, and also use the symbols as well, because the combination of those. And so we have a few mathematicians here, right? So let's say you have a 6-digit password, and if you only use lowercase letters, that's 26 to the 6th power, number of combinations. If you use uppercase and lowercase letters, that's 52 characters to the 6th power. If you use numbers, lowercase, uppercase, and numbers, you've got now 62 to the power of whatever. And then now if you're using special characters, you're using 96 to the 6th power. Those are the number of different combinations that you have before a bad guy can crack your password, right? So making it harder for them to actually do that.
Show in your statistics that the number of Trojans is growing exponentially.
Mm-hmm.
That AOL was the target for the password. I guess they figured
The first one, yes.
they come up with a Trojan that knows you're in AOL, knows you're typing your ID and your password, and lets you keystroke. All these Trojans are targeting different banks, different opportunities.
Yep.
Because I can have a great password, but if I have somebody reading my keystrokes,
Right.
it's not going to help.
Exactly.
How likely is it that unless I have your software, how likely is it that somebody's going to be looking at my keystrokes?
Well, you just want to be, I like to treat, I always tell people, treat your computer almost like you treat your own home, right? You walk around your home, you know how the paint is, you know the condition of your door, your weather stripping, and that kind of thing. Your computer is the same way. People who are unfamiliar with a computer get afraid because it's a technology they don't understand or know. But it's really basic if you really break it down to its simplest form. There's inputs into a computer system, and then there's outputs. One of the main inputs is through your Ethernet cable to the internet, or a thumb drive, or something like that, right? So just be aware of what's on your machine, your running processes, what should be running and what's not, what kind of software you've installed. So if your work machine or your personal machine, you're probably going to have Microsoft Office on there. You're going to have Internet Explorer. You're probably going to have Adobe Acrobat Reader, some of the software that you normally typically use, financial software, accounting software, whatever. Be aware of what processes are running on your machine, but also be cautious as far as where you go to the internet, right? If you are, if you're looking for free software, if you're going to peer-to-peer sites, some of the gray to dark corners of the internet, chances are you're going to be a little bit more susceptible to getting infected than if you were just staying on, the typical news channels, using Google, using Yahoo, most of the main websites. So that's the reason why, and there's no way for any one of us to know, if someone sends us a link to a site, is it legitimate or is it malicious? So that's where web reputation comes into play. Having something, and I'm not doing a product picture, but because we are already aware of that, because we have customers who have already visited that website, and we've already touched it, and we already know whether it's malicious or not, we can now offer that knowledge to you with something like Site Advisor, and it can tell you if it's red, yellow, or green before you visit it.
It seems like the world is writing McAfee and a couple others.
Mm-hmm.
You're competing against huge growing numbers, trying to figure out how to make money.
Yep. It's a good question. Who's winning? So I don't think we can solve the problem with just technology. All right, I'll give you actually an example of where we did win. Going back to one of my slides, you remember where the blue bar was going up, and there was a red bar that was going like this, but there was also a yellow bar, a really tiny yellow bar that went up and then went down. And that yellow bar was adware and spyware. And this is where, do you remember in the late 1990s, you would go to, if you were using a peer-to-peer, or if you go to some website, all of a sudden you were seeing pop-ups all over your computer, all over the place. And now you have web browser plugins installed on your Internet Explorer or Mozilla, and you're like, how did this get on my machine? I didn't even do anything, right? And now all of a sudden you're seeing ads and pop-ups all over the machine, all over the place. Well, that was the prime era of spyware and adware. What ended up happening was there was no policy, and there was no legislation, and there was no accountability on best practices around the internet. So a lot of these adware companies, the way that they make money is they will put a pop-up on your machine. If you click on it, they get revenue every time you click. So it's a per-click revenue scheme. So in order to make more money, what do? They want to put more ads on people's machines, so they click on it. Whether they click on it to close it or they click on it to see the ad, they're still making money, right? So these adware companies were, there was no one telling them they couldn't do this, so they were installing as many adware on as many people's machines as possible in order to make money, and they were making hundreds of millions of dollars. And so the problem became so bad that Dell, all the internet ISPs, America Online, Earthlink, the computer makers, Dell, HP, Sony, Microsoft got into the game, and all of us in the security space. And the reason why they now wanted to solve this problem is because they were losing millions and millions of dollars on support. Right? Dell had this, every time someone calls in Dell support, I mean, it costs them anywhere from $30 to a few $100s because they have to pay that support representative, sit there on the phone with that customer, and now they're getting flooded with volumes of calls because of this problem called adware and spyware. So we came together as a group, as an industry, and we started the Anti-Spyware Coalition. And it was the computer manufacturers, it was the internet service providers, it was the security companies, it was the operating systems, and it was also the Federal Trade Commission and some of the people from Washington, D.C. And we got together and we defined what was spyware, we defined what was adware, and then we also defined what was acceptable practices on the internet around this specific thing. And we said, if you hide your behavior in a 100-page user license agreement, because that was another thing that the adware companies would do. They would say, hey, I'm gonna I'm gonna track everything that you do on your computer, and they hide it on page 96 of a 200-page end user license agreement. When you install something, people just click next, next, next because they want to install the machine, right? And they said, well, the user said yes, so I can do it, right? And they would hide behind that end user license agreement. And then they would also, whenever you install something that you wanted, it would also install like 30 other programs in there without your knowledge or consent. And so we forced them to ask for permission to install software. We forced them to not hide under the end user license agreement and stuff like that, and make behavior of the software visible to the user so that the user now has a choice on what they do. Well, and then also the Federal Trade Commission started holding these companies accountable to doing that. Companies such as Gain or Gator, Direct Revenue, 180 Solutions, these were some of the very large adware companies in the 1990s that were making hundreds of millions of dollars doing this. And we started holding them accountable to what they were doing. And so what ended up happening was what we thought would happen. These companies that wanted to be legitimate started cleaning up their act, and they changed their behavior and they changed their practices. And so today you don't see adwares and pop-ups as much anymore, right? But the other thing that also happened was the bad guys who always had malicious intent to do that anyway, they just became more malicious. And they started, what was grayware before now became Trojans and password stealing Trojans. But that is an example of where we were victorious. Because we came together, the problem was so big and all these companies were losing so much money on support and loss of sales that we came together with the Federal Trade Commission and we held these companies accountable. And now, no more spyware, no more adware, right? And the only way to go back to your question about Trojans, the only way we can be successful is not just through technology, but collaboration with law enforcement, with government agencies, with policy, ISPs and domain registrars. All of these groups have to get together. And when the problem becomes big enough that they're willing to sit down and solve the problem together, that's the only way I think we'll win. Yes, sir? I'm sorry, ma'am. I don't have an opinion, and I don't know enough about net neutrality to comment on it. Sorry. Yes, sir?
You guys are working on OS systems that are coming out now.
The what systems?
Like Android honeycomb and stuff like that.
The mobile systems, is that what you said?
Mobile systems.
Yeah, yeah. So if you look at, so I don't know if you're aware, but Intel has already publicly announced that they're going to acquire McAfee. I think it'll be official sometime within the next few weeks. And I can't comment on anything about that other than what's already public. But what I can tell you is I can show you what is public information, right? So if you look at what McAfee has been, McAfee acquires good technology and good startup companies. And if you look at the last few acquisitions we've done over the course of the last few years, it's been around mobile threats. If you look at what Intel's been doing, they've also been acquiring mobile technology, right? So, you put 2 and 2 together, we're going there, right? So yes, to answer your question, back to my presentation, it's wherever you're going to have a critical mass of people. Now, mobile malware, there was a threat of mobile malware back in the early 2000s, and we even had a mobile security product, but I'll be the first to admit it wasn't very successful because there wasn't a lot of mobile malware. And the reason why there wasn't a lot of mobile malware or threats was because you had so many different smartphones using so many different flavors of OS. There was Symbian, but there was also like dozens and dozens of different types of Symbian. There was Palm OS, there was a Windows OS. So there's all these different types that only had small percentages of the market. But what's happened within just the last 2-3 years? You got your iPhone, you got Droid, and now you're going to have Windows coming out. And Nokia has decided, they've actually, I think they're close to being bankrupt. I mean, they've been doing, the companies actually hasn't been doing well because they really haven't kept up with the market. So, and I think they decided that they were not going to stop doing the Symbian OS as well. So what happens now is you have this large market. More people are playing in the mobile space, but it's also consolidating on certain operating systems. So we haven't seen significant threats in mobile yet, but if history repeats itself, that's where it's going to go, right? Yes, ma'am. Well, we don't have let's say a mobile malware solution right now. We actually I take that back. We do, but it's not readily available. We do have management capabilities for, say, the iPhone and stuff like that. And there's more on our roadmap. We're going to have a whole lot more mobile solutions within the upcoming future. But we do have some already. Yes, sir.
Curiosity, the background process of employees that are going to work with McAfee and tracking that you perform of ex-employees.
The background? Oh, okay. So like criminal record and that kind of thing? Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So like I said, I tell our employees, they have the power to use the force, and they can decide to use it for the forces of good or go to the dark side of the force. And we always look. We will never hire an unethical person, right? Because that's really most important. They have the same technical skills as these bad guys, as the malware authors, as the malicious hackers. Exact same technical skills. But what the difference is what's in their heart and what's in their soul, right? How they use those abilities is really what we're looking for. And we do, extensive background checks. We also do extensive interviews to get an understanding of their personality and their moral and ethical values.
And how many ex-employees McAfee?
Ex-employees? Ex-employees that go somewhere else? Well, our security space is a kind of a small world. So if they end up leaving McAfee, they will end up going to Symantec or going to Trend Micro or one of our competitors. But what I can tell you is, as an employee, you work. I've had employees go and they think the grass is greener on the other side, but then they end up missing the family culture and the environment that we have in McAfee Labs, and a lot of our employees that end up leaving end up coming back. So it's a small world as far as our security researchers, and I think I was talking to someone, Puerto Rico is like this, right? It's a small island, and it's very important the reputation you have in this island because everyone knows everyone, right? And so if you have a bad reputation, someone's going to hear about it. In the security space, it's the same thing. Every security researcher has a reputation because it's such a small community. So if you develop a positive reputation, any company, any security company will hire you. But if you develop a bad reputation, good luck trying to get a new job. How many employees? Well, McAfee has over 6,000 employees worldwide. Yep. And it's growing with every acquisition that we do.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
You see the history, right? This world with the people and everything. Looks like you have been always reactive, looking out there, what's going on. Then put it in your computer or your network like a guard that you give to him more information to see if you can pass or you cannot pass. Do you think that in the future there's going to be a change in the approach of security, or we're going to continue making this guard stronger and in different places, more doors and stuff like that?
No, I think it will change. I think it has to evolve, right?
It has to evolve, right?
It has to evolve. Now, can I tell you what it's going to evolve to? Probably not right now, right? But I mean, that's the way technology works. I mean, we evolve with technology. Security evolves with the technology. We don't know what the next security vulnerability is going to be. We don't know what the next product is going to be, but it will evolve. And one of my mentors said to me, you can't do the same thing over and over again and expect different results, right? So that's what we're always thinking about. So we're always, within our laboratory, we have some really smart people always thinking about this problem, thinking about out-of-the-box ways to how to solve this problem, and prototyping those solutions. So we have things that are being prototyped right now, new technology that help solve some of these security issues that you'll hear about in the upcoming future. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I had a curiosity. Instead, this is more research time. For example, what happened when we have installed in our computer antivirus product and detect some malicious threats, instead of delete it or erase from your computer, put in quarantine.
Quarantine.
But why still in quarantine and you cannot delete it? Why the antivirus product didn't have the power to erase?
Well, you can delete it if you want to. You can actually set your settings so that it'll clear out your quarantine cache or delete it. But the reason why it has to be quarantined is the same reason why you have a recycle bin in your operating system, in your Windows OS. Because if you delete something that by accident, or if you deleted something that you actually did want, then you can actually go in and restore that quarantine file, right? So, our product, we have a lot of, it's a large spectrum of detection, and from very specific, so this is known to be malware, and it's definitely bad, you definitely need to delete it, to detection of what we call PUPs, potentially unwanted programs. Now, potentially unwanted programs are stuff like spyware, adware, but it's also stuff like remote administration tools, right? Like, I don't know if you know what VNC is, but like, a PC Anywhere, those kinds of machines. Now, those software is used by IT administrators so they can manage and control the machines of their users, right? And they have full access to those machines, and the user gives the IT administrator access because they have the right to have access. But the bad guys can also use that exact same software to gain control of the machine, unauthorized access to those machines. So what we do is we detect and we notify the user that there is this software present on the machine. And it's up to you whether you want to delete it, to quarantine it, or to keep it.
I made the question because, for example, when we finish the whole process of check your computer, at the end you can delete it if it's possible to delete it. But for any reason, certain virus you cannot delete it. Only put in quarantine. I don't know why.
Okay.
That's why I make the mention of I make the question, because for example, if I start a game, I want that after use the computer, I put to run the antivirus. So for any reason, you always see the same virus in the quarantine part.
Okay.
But you never can delete it actually.
So I don't know the answer to that.
Especially the Trojans. I don't know why the Trojans, especially the ones that are putting
Okay.
certain products, antivirus products, can be erased from the computer for any reason. That's why I made the question. And the other question is related as part of the research. Are you interested in from where this virus came from? For example, I received a message in my computer that I'm supposed to have a lot of Trojans and worms, and please enter to this site and buy for any or for $59.95.
Right.
So actually, I decided to use for any. I have the bad thinking that there's something wrong, and I use the IP address that they have in the website.
Right.
So I made a Google search of this website. The website actually came from Russia, and I know that Russia is the #1 country in this kind of threats. So it's very interesting because what happens if I press this site?
So to answer your question as far as the origin of these threats, yes, they do come from Russia. Yes, they do come from China, but they also come from the U.S. They also come from Europe. They also come from Latin America. And the thing is, I'm not saying that a large percentage doesn't come from those regions, but the media oftentimes sensationalizes a lot of this, and they only focus on certain countries because politically, those are the countries that we also focus on. But like I said, there's evil people in every single country and every single region, and it doesn't matter where you're from. All this malware is going to come from every single different region. We've seen it come from Latin America. We've seen it coming from the U.S. and Canada. We've seen it coming from Europe, but also some of these other countries as well. So the IP address that you looked up, the thing is about being able to trace it back, they can go through numerous different proxies. So the IP address that you're actually looking up could have been just one of those nodes on the way there. It might not have been the origin. Yeah. Any other questions?
You talk about viruses and spyware and bots and everything. What's the difference? I think, what's the difference between a virus and spyware?
Sure. Okay, very good question. So malware is the term we use to bucketize everything. Malware stands for malicious software, right? Any file that could be potentially malicious. So a computer virus is just like a biological virus. A biological virus has to attach itself to a host, to a good cell in the human body or in the biological sense. And so a computer virus is the same thing. It attaches itself to a clean file, usually executables or DLL files or that kind of thing, because every time you run an executable, it will then send its control over to the virus, and now the virus executes. And then the virus re-gives control back to the executable, and now the executable runs, right? So you never know. Let's say you run notepad.exe on your machine, and that notepad.exe is infected with a computer virus. As soon as you run it, that computer virus runs in the background, and you never knew it. Right? So a computer virus attaches itself to another file. A worm, a computer worm, is a self-contained file that spreads from one computer to another, but it doesn't need to attach itself to any other file. So the most common way for worms to spread is through email. A worm, very common worms in the early 90s was like I love you, for example. You would get an email that said, I love you, here's a love letter. And it had attached to it a VB script, Visual Basic Script. And if you clicked on that file, you thought it was a love letter, but it actually was the worm itself. It would then go through your contacts and find the first 50 people in your contact list and send itself to those 50 people. And that's the way it would spread. right? So worms used to spread that way. Then you talk about Trojans. Trojan, is everyone familiar with Greek mythology? So the Battle of Troy and how the Athenians were able to penetrate the city of Troy by putting a wooden horse on the beach, and that they pulled in the Trojan horse and it was full of soldiers, and they were able to defeat the city of Troy that way. So the concept there was the Athenians made the people of Troy believe that that was something else. They made it believe it was a gift for the gods. And so they literally brought the Trojan behind the wall that was impenetrable. And then that was the way that they won that war. So a Trojan is the same thing. When you go and you try to download something and you think it's something, but it actually ends up being something else. Let's say you're looking for the next Britney Spears MP3, right? And you download an MP3 and you double click on it expecting to hear her latest song, and it ends up being an executable or instead, and it ends up stealing your usernames and passwords. So that's the difference. All right. Any other questions? Really good question so far. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me in Puerto Rico.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you to Cortelco that has sponsored this activity and is sponsoring other activities with Sagrado. I'll switch to Spanish for a little moment. Gracias al auspicio de Cortelco, la Universidad del Sagrado Corazón va a estar ofreciendo a su comunidad el acceso a McAfee para descarga gratis. Próximamente le estaremos notificando cómo pueden los miembros de nuestra comunidad, profesores, estudiantes y empleados, conectarse a la infraestructura inalámbrica para actualizar sus máquinas, descargar el sistema de antivirus y actualizar sus máquinas, que es parte de las actividades del 25 aniversario que nos está auspiciando, y próximamente también inauguraremos el aula McAfee, donde estaremos inaugurando una serie de software y hardware que va a permitir a los estudiantes de nuestra universidad en las áreas de informática a poder conocer todas las herramientas que McAfee provee para administrar la red y manejar la seguridad de la red. Así que quiero aprovechar para darle las gracias a Juan Carlos, a Jorge, a Arnaldo y a la gente de Cortelco. Que están colaborando con nuestra institución para educar en esta área de seguridad a las próximas camadas de gerentes y de profesionales. Así que nada, gracias por su comparecencia. Les invito a que nos acompañen el próximo 17 y 18 de marzo, que tenemos la última conferencia magistral con relación al aniversario, donde traeremos al doctor Harry Lewis de la Universidad de Harvard, uno de los primeros doctores en informática en Estados Unidos, que nos va a hablar sobre el impacto de las tecnologías en la sociedad y cómo nos está cambiando la vida. Gracias y bienvenidos de nuevo.